When we buy food, we expect it to be safe. That was not always the case. It wasn't until President Theodore Roosevelt signed the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 that Americans could feel confident that their food wasn't being adulterated with harmful chemicals. Few Americans know that one man, a chemist working in the federal government, was largely responsible for that law and for the food inspections that keep consumers safe today. In 1883, Dr. Harvey W. Wiley became head of the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Bureau of Chemistry. Dr. Wiley devoted his career to educating the public about the dangers of adulterated food. A medical doctor and chemist by training, Wiley came into the federal government just as the packaging of food was becoming a large and virtually unregulated industry. Because of the research Wiley conducted in federal government laboratories, he became alarmed about chemicals used in food production. He aggressively campaigned for Congress to enact pure food legislation. The food industry bitterly opposed him, and his efforts were routinely thwarted. To attract attention, in 1902, Dr. Wiley began experiments on human volunteers. A dozen young men in his department, dubbed the Poison Squad by journalists, voluntarily ate food treated with preservatives that manufacturers claimed were safe. Wiley later recalled his findings. Needless to say, during the 5-year period of these experiments, the chemical and physiological data were vast and somewhat technical, but the lesson they taught was clear and unmistakable. Preservatives used in foods are harmful to health. Wiley's scientific campaign got some attention, but what finally energized the American public was a dramatic and hugely successful work of fiction that was solidly based on fact. Upton Sinclair's 1906 novel, The Jungle, drew on research that the crusading author had conducted in meatpacking plants in Chicago. The book contained vivid scenes depicting filthy conditions and the deliberate butchering of diseased animals. The Jungle recounted how, quote, men welcomed tuberculosis in the cattle they were feeding because it made them fatten more quickly, and where they bought up all the old rancid butter left over in grocery stores of a continent and oxidized it by a forced air process to take away the odor, rechurned it with skim milk, and sold it in bricks in the cities. The public was outraged by the revelations in Sinclair's book, as was President Theodore Roosevelt. In 1906, Congress took up the cause and passed the Pure Food and Drug Act. Wiley was widely credited with making the Pure Food and Drug Act become law, and his office had the task of enforcing the new act. The Pure Food and Drug Act was landmark legislation that opened the door to broader federal regulation of private business. Wiley was a determined consumer safety advocate who greatly expanded his staff. He also remained in the public eye and was routinely attacked by opponents in industry and even some government officials. When he resigned from the government in 1912, headlines noted that he was still fighting many of these enemies. Often writing articles for popular magazines and contributing to guides to food adulteration, Dr. Wiley remained a defender of pure food laws until his death in 1930. Over the past century and a half, Dr. Wiley's Bureau of Chemistry has evolved and grown into today's United States Food Safety and Inspection Service. The FSIS is the nation's first line of defense against foodborne illnesses. At Dr. Wiley's death, the New York Times reported as follows on July 4, 1930. In recognition of the unusual public service of Dr. Harvey W. Wiley, War Department regulations governing memorials in the National Cemetery at Arlington have been waived to permit the grave of the health expert to be marked by a monument inscribed with the words, "Father of the Pure Food Laws." This video was brought to you by the Public Education Project, an independent nonprofit group dedicated to improving public knowledge of the government by sharing the rich history and exciting stories of the federal agencies that serve our nation. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe now to start your journey into the fascinating history of the U.S. government today. If you'd like to delve deeper into the rich history of the Food Safety and Inspection Service or any other federal agency, be sure to visit our Agency Histories page at publiceducationproject.org, featuring nearly 250 detailed pages showcasing the diverse stories of agencies dating back to the nation's founding. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok so you don't miss out on new videos and updates.